General Hospital will reveal interesting facts on Thursday, March 13, 2025. First, Liz felt an overwhelming sense of fear as the plan she and Lucky had meticulously crafted suddenly turned into a dangerous game with unforeseen consequences. The truth behind Dex and Sam's deaths had finally come to light, but the cost was far too high. Lucky had mysteriously disappeared after an encounter with Cyrus, leaving Liz in a state of panic and uncertainty. They had uncovered a truth that Cyrus was desperate to keep hidden, and now, his retaliation had come swiftly and brutally. Liz knew that time was running out, and if Lucky had fallen into Cyrus's hands, the consequences could be fatal. Their original plan had been thorough. They had spent weeks gathering evidence, identifying every weak point in Cyrus's operations, and ensuring they had irrefutable proof to expose him. Every detail had been carefully considered, every move strategically calculated. But with Lucky missing, everything had changed. Liz was now alone in a battle that had escalated far beyond what she had anticipated. She could not move forward without him, but she also could not afford to wait too long. If Cyrus had captured Lucky, then the clock was ticking, and she had to act before it was too late. As she tried to retrace Lucky's last known steps, Liz realized that Cyrus's influence extended further than she had imagined. His loyal enforcers were moving aggressively, as if they had anticipated their every move. It became clear that they had underestimated the reach of his power. Every attempt Liz made to find answers was met with dead ends, and anyone who might have been willing to help was either too afraid or had already been silenced. The walls were closing in, and Liz found herself questioning whether their plan had been doomed from the start. Despite the looming threat, she knew she couldn't abandon the mission. If they backed down now, everything Dex and Sam had suffered would be in vain. But continuing with their original approach would be reckless. With Cyrus aware of their intentions, Liz had to be more cautious than ever. She needed allies she could trust, a way to outmaneuver Cyrus without putting herself in the same danger that had already claimed Lucky. Every decision she made from this point forward had to be precise, one wrong move, and she could share Lucky's fate. Determined but shaken, Liz resolved to alter her course. She could no longer rely solely on the evidence they had gathered. She needed a way to strike at Cyrus from an angle he wouldn't expect. Finding Lucky was her top priority, but she also had to ensure that Cyrus's empire was exposed and dismantled once and for all. The road ahead was filled with uncertainty, but Liz refused to let fear dictate her actions. She had come too far to turn back now. Second, Anna was seething with anger after everything that had transpired. Ending her relationship with Valentine had been difficult enough, but the weight of what followed only intensified her fury. The moment she took down the two WSB agents who had attempted to assassinate Valentine, she knew she had crossed a line. But what truly enraged her was the realization that someone within the organization had sanctioned his death. Brennan was at the heart of it all, pulling the strings from the shadows. Anna had spent years uncovering lies and conspiracies, yet this betrayal cut deeper than most. She needed answers, and she needed them fast. Despite the storm of emotions raging within her, Anna understood that finding the truth required calculated precision. She couldn't simply rely on past connections or surface-level intelligence. The only way to truly expose Brennan's motives was to get close to him, to play his game while secretly controlling the board. It was a dangerous strategy, one that could backfire if she made even the slightest misstep, but she was willing to take the risk. Valentine's life had already been put in danger once, and Anna refused to let it happen again. If Brennan had a deeper connection to him, she intended to find out exactly what it was. As she began to piece together her plan, Anna realized that working with Brennan, at least on the surface, was her only viable option. It was an uneasy alliance, one built on deception and manipulation. Brennan was a man who thrived on power and control, and if she wanted to extract information from him, she needed to make him believe that she was an ally rather than a threat. That meant playing the long game, earning his trust, feeding him just enough to keep him engaged while secretly unraveling his web of secrets. It was a delicate balance, but Anna had spent a lifetime mastering the art of deception. The deeper she delved into Brennan's world, the more unsettling the truth became. Valentine's past, always shrouded in secrecy, seemed to be woven into Brennan's network in ways she hadn't anticipated. There was more to their connection than mere espionage or power struggles. Whatever Brennan wanted from Valentine, it was personal. Anna had to uncover that link before it was too late. She couldn't afford to let her emotions cloud her judgment, even though every fiber of her being wanted to tear Brennan apart for what he had done. With every move she made, the stakes grew higher. Anna knew that one wrong step could cost her everything, her mission, her life, and even Valentine's survival. But she had never been one to back down from a challenge. If Brennan thought he could manipulate her, he was gravely mistaken. She was prepared to infiltrate his world, to play his game better than he ever could, and when the time was right, she would expose him for what he truly was. The truth was within her grasp, and nothing, not even Brennan's deadly influence, would stop her from uncovering it. Third, Portia was doing everything in her power to cover her tracks. The moment she received Drew's veiled threat, insinuating that Heather's test results had been tampered with, panic set in. Her hands trembled as she replayed his words in her mind, realizing just how much danger she was in. Drew wasn't a man to make idle threats, he was calculated, relentless, and if he had even the slightest suspicion, he would stop at nothing to uncover the truth. Portia knew she couldn't afford any mistakes. If Drew had found inconsistencies in Heather's records, then her secret was already slipping through the cracks. She had to act now before it was too late. The weight of her actions bore down on her as she struggled to come up with a way out. Every decision she made from this moment on had to be flawless. The problem was that Drew had all the leverage, and she had none. If he exposed her, not only would she lose everything she had worked so hard to protect, but the ripple effects would be catastrophic. Panic wasn't an option, she needed control. But covering up medical records, manipulating data, and erasing any lingering evidence wasn't something she could do alone. She needed help. The question was, who could she trust? Desperation led her to the only logical conclusion: she had to pull others into this mess. And there were only two people who had the access and expertise she needed: Brad and Curtis. Brad, with his history of medical manipulations, could handle any loose ends in the hospital system. He had done it before, and if she played her cards right, he would do it again. Curtis, on the other hand, was a different kind of asset. His connections, his ability to operate in the gray areas of the law, and most importantly, his loyalty, however fragile it might be, made him a necessary ally. The problem was, she wasn't sure how much Curtis would be willing to risk for her. Their relationship had already been strained, and dragging him into this could break the last bit of trust they had left. Despite her doubts, Portia knew there was no turning back. If she wanted to stay ahead of Drew, she had to make sure every piece of evidence leading back to her was erased. The risk was overwhelming, but so was the thought of losing everything. She carefully mapped out her approach, knowing she had to tread carefully. If she pushed too hard, Brad and Curtis might see through her desperation. If she hesitated, Drew would gain the upper hand. Time was running out. The walls were closing in, and Portia had only one shot to bury the truth before it consumed her. She would do whatever it took, lie, manipulate, and pull whatever strings necessary, to ensure Drew never got what he was after. Because if he did, she wouldn't be the only one going down. Fourth, Carly had always trusted her instincts, and this time was no different. Something about Josslyn's sudden internship on Easter Island didn't feel right. At first, she tried to reason with herself, convincing herself that Josslyn was simply pursuing an exciting opportunity, eager to step out of her comfort zone. But the more she thought about it, the more uneasy she became. Josslyn had never mentioned an interest in archaeology or environmental research, so why now? And why Easter Island, of all places? The pieces didn't fit, and Carly had learned the hard way that when something didn't add up, it usually meant trouble. She had seen this kind of deception before, and she wasn't about to let her daughter become entangled in something dangerous without knowing the full truth. What truly unsettled Carly, however, was the feeling that Josslyn wasn't being entirely honest with her. There had been a shift in her behavior, subtle, but noticeable to a mother who knew her daughter better than anyone. Josslyn had been unusually vague when discussing the details of her internship, skimming over key aspects of the program and dodging direct questions. When Carly pressed her for more information, Josslyn's responses felt rehearsed, as if she were reading from a script rather than sharing genuine enthusiasm. That was when Carly's suspicions turned into full-blown concern. She knew when someone was hiding something, and this time, it wasn't just Josslyn, it was Brennan. His involvement in this situation sent a chill down Carly's spine. If he had manipulated Josslyn into making this decision, then whatever was happening was far more dangerous than Josslyn could possibly realize. Carly couldn't afford to wait for answers to come to her. She had to take action before it was too late. If Josslyn was in over her head, Carly needed to know exactly what she was dealing with. She began her own investigation, using every resource at her disposal to uncover the truth. First, she reached out to her contacts, quietly gathering information about the internship program. The more she looked into it, the more suspicious she became. The program's details were vague, its listed sponsors seemed non-existent, and there were no clear records of past participants. That was a massive red flag. If this were a legitimate opportunity, why was it so difficult to verify? The deeper Carly dug, the more convinced she became that Brennan was orchestrating something sinister. But what was his endgame? And why involve Josslyn? One thing was certain, Carly wasn't about to let her daughter walk blindly into a trap. She knew Brennan well enough to recognize that he never made a move without a calculated purpose. If Josslyn was part of his plan, it meant he had something to gain. Was he using her to manipulate Carly? Was he setting Josslyn up as leverage for something bigger? The possibilities were endless, and none of them were good. Carly also knew that confronting Josslyn directly wouldn't work, not yet. If she accused Brennan without solid proof, Josslyn would see it as paranoia and dig in her heels. No, Carly needed to be smarter. She needed to get to the truth before she made a move, ensuring that when she finally exposed Brennan, there would be no room for him to weasel his way out. The thought of Brennan using her daughter made Carly's blood boil. She had faced dangerous men before, but nothing ignited her fury like someone threatening her family. If Brennan thought he could manipulate Josslyn without consequences, he had no idea who he was dealing with. Carly was relentless when it came to protecting the people she loved, and this time would be no different. She wasn't just going to stop Brennan, she was going to make sure he regretted ever trying to deceive her. Whatever he was planning, it ended here. Carly would expose his lies, bring his schemes crashing down, and ensure that he never had the chance to manipulate Josslyn, or anyone else, again. Finally, Lucas had barely settled back into his routine in Port Charles when an unexpected encounter sent shockwaves through his already busy mind. He had returned to the hospital with a renewed sense of purpose, eager to immerse himself in his work and prove once again why he was one of the finest doctors in the city. His surgical skills had already impressed colleagues and staff, and in the short time since his return, he had performed several remarkable procedures that had people talking. But nothing could have prepared him for what happened next. As he turned a corner in the hospital, he came face to face with someone he never expected to see, someone who shouldn't even be alive. Dr. Austin. For a moment, Lucas thought his mind was playing tricks on him. It was impossible. Austin had been declared dead, and worse, his name had been tainted with criminal ties that still lingered in whispers throughout Port Charles. But there he was, standing right in front of him as if nothing had happened, as if he hadn't been buried along with the secrets that surrounded his death. Lucas felt his pulse quicken. How was this possible? Was it a mistake? A ghost from the past? Or was there something far more sinister at play? The tension in the air was undeniable, and the shock on Lucas's face was mirrored by those around him. It wasn't just his return that disturbed Lucas, it was the implications of it. If Austin was alive, then someone had lied about his death. Someone had orchestrated his disappearance, and more importantly, someone had a reason to make Port Charles believe that he was gone for good. But why? And more pressing, why now? The last time Austin had been seen, his name had been linked to dangerous criminals, and his fate had been sealed in blood. If he was truly back, was he here to finish unfinished business? Or had he been forced out of hiding by something, or someone, even worse? Lucas had no intention of letting this mystery go unanswered. He had spent too much of his life dealing with deception and betrayal to ignore the obvious. If Austin was back, it meant that danger was lurking just beneath the surface, and Port Charles could once again be thrown into chaos. What terrified him most was the thought that Austin's return might not just bring back unanswered questions but also awaken the ghosts of his criminal past. If Austin was involved with the wrong people before, there was no telling what might follow him now. Lucas knew he had a choice: he could walk away, pretend he hadn't seen anything, and focus on the life he had rebuilt. Or he could do what he had always done, face the truth, no matter how dark it was. Because if Austin had come back from the dead, then something was very, very wrong. And Lucas had a sinking feeling that whatever was coming next, it was going to change everything.